All right, happy No Comic Book Day, comic geeks, and welcome back to the Script Heroes podcast. It's the strange Saturday Super Show coming at you a week early this month as we hop in on the first Saturday of November instead of the second. We are here today to talk about Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees by Patrick Horvath with lettering from Hassan Asman Alao. Patrick Horvath, this is really a kind of breakout hit for him. He also did a Free For All on Zoop and did some art for Haha at Image. But Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees was an absolute smash sensation. He's the writer-artist on that. What? Oh, do I sound too much like an Image... like an Image player?
It's a little out of place for you to like suck off the success of a book as you intro it. It's just not something you typically do. So I found it very funny.
I mean, I think that it's super rad that this is like one of the first books that he put out, and it got so much acclaim, so much attention. It's even getting a second series, like from kind of headlining IDW's horror line, right?
Yep.
So, like, I think that it deserved...
No, I think there's two creator-owns in it. I can't remember what the other one is, but I think there's one other, in addition to all the licensed stuff.
So I think it deserves some second off.
We have derailed immediately.
Okay, that's so your fault. Yeah, that's really on you. We're going to be talking about Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. As we do with our kind of review and explainer videos, we're going to be going through full spoilers for the book, and it's a book that if you don't want spoilers, you really don't want, you know?
Like, spoilers. You don't want spoilers.
Well, you know, there's some books where it's like, okay, whatever, a spoiler, Batman wins. And then there are some books where it's like, let's do a reveal about who this serial killer is. And that's something that you can't walk back from. So if you're trying to avoid spoilers, go read it, and then come some midpoint.
I think it's in like 4. It comes earlier than you'd expect it to come.
Yes, which is one of the really cool things about this book, which is why I'm going to jump right into talking about it. So Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees is set in the town of Woodbrook, an idyllic town. I believe some material around the book have likened it to Richard Scarry's Busy Town, which is very accurate and very funny. It's full of anthropomorphic animals in this like very soft art style. It's like, I don't know, pen and marker style art. The residents of this town are all incredibly pleasant to each other, and we are following the town's hardware store owner and local handywoman, Sam. Sam is a brown bear. Everybody else is animals too, obviously, so it's not weird that she's a brown bear. But it just feels relevant. And she owns and operates her family's hardware store with no family in sight. Along with her here is Charlie, a little mole, maybe? What do you think Charlie is?
That's a good question. I think mole is probably correct.
He's like a little rodent boy.
Yeah, he certainly
has a wife and family. So Sam, we see her helping out the locals with their various hardware store needs and the wonderful family dynamics. A lot of the start of this book is set up to like give the normalcy of the town and the state of the town before something horrible happens. But very quickly we move along with Sam to a quote-unquote appointment in the city where she proceeds to follow a duckman, lure him to her car, and I mean, I feel like there's no grace in getting into it. Chloroform and murder him?
Yeah. The one thing I'll say is I don't know that she follows him. I think she more sets a trap.
That's fair. Fair.
For like the first unsuspecting person to kind of stumble upon. Just to make clear, like, this wasn't a like seeking out this specific person. This was a very,
in fact, one of her only rules is that her victims have to be random, because we learn that this is something she's been doing for decades. She goes to the city to find and commit literal murder before driving back to her small idyllic town after having like gotten that out of her system. And goes back to her
the
life.
city thing is the thing that Sam really drives home as important, because like in a city, nobody really, bats an eye at a person disappearing, but in a small town where everybody knows each other, and this is very important when we get to, I think, in issue 2 is when we get like the kind of shake up. If this isn't enough of a shake up, we get the like actual shake up to at least the Sam's world. Which relies on that heavily. But yeah, this is quite an interesting sequence, both being visually very nice in the comic, but also just because the like setup and like through line of this issue is really great, as it's like Sam, there's captions, by the way, to give you kind of internality from Sam. It's Sam's kind of like own perspective on like the normalcy of the non-normalcy of the murder, if that makes sense. I don't know that I phrased that well, but like that's the vibe of, you said like the beginning of the issue set up very much to be like, this is the standard normalcy of this town. But the interesting thing is the entire issue is still like structured and like delivered to us that way, even when we get to the murder. So that's like the really interesting and cool thing about this first issue.
Yes. And is such, I think one of the really gripping things about the book is the character of Sam. And she's clearly some sort of like sociopath. Like later we have a funeral and she talks about how she doesn't understand why people are like feeling the way they're feeling, but she knows how to blend in. So it's very like sociopath coded. And also she's a serial killer. So
I don't know that like coded is. I don't know if this is like a like something we can't say. I think that's just
she is also just a serial killer. Like has killed like over 40 people. Maybe even more than that. Who knows?
I think she said she's been killing for 20 years. So,
no, she does it every month.
So that's like a metric fuck ton of people.
But to get back to her murderous tendencies, she fakes some car issues, and this very nice, kind duck is like, "Oh, let me help you out here." And in what is both kind of hilarious but also like terrifying, she chloroforms the duck so like the cloth is over the top of his bill, since that's where like his nose is, and she's like holding his beak. It's a horrifying image, in my humble opinion.
I think you're very correct.
And then, speaking of horrifying images, we have this beautiful, like 2-page spread.
Horrifying but beautiful.
Yeah. Where Sam drives a nail into the duck's brain while he's still unconscious to kill him.
That's like the most horrifying thing in this entire series to me. Like, that is just awful. That gave me the worst like body grotesque. I was like, nope, don't want it. Please stop.
Like, she I believe calls it like a dream he'll never wake up from, or something like that. Which is
horrifying.
Also just like a horrifying thing for her as a serial killer. Like, it's not that she's like delighting in, I don't know, the inhumanity of the murder, it's not like she's like, I want to hear you scream as I kill you.
She's so detached from it. That's what I was saying with like the normalcy of the way she does it. It's so freaking detached and non-personal and non like it's so interesting the way that it's delivered.
And then she has an almost like Dexter-esque setup where she has this crank that she can lift up because she's tied his feet, so he's hanging upside down like a literal like cut of meat. She cuts his throat to bleed him out again, I believe, like you would in an animal you're butchering. And then she does butcher him. She cuts him into small pieces that she then distributes into paint cans that she has brought from her hardware store. And she methodically buries these paint cans and it's so like it's so routine for her. It's so rote for her in a way that is just terrified that she has been doing this for so long, and she's been just getting away with it because she says she's buried 43 people out here, and in 20 years nobody has ever been the wiser.
Yeah,
except for Mother Nature.
I want to shout something out that I actually missed here the first time, but and we'll see. Because we'll get back to it. Is that in one of the shots here in the foreground there is a paint can with a smudge of blood on it.
Yeah,
and it's very interesting, and we'll get to why. But I did not think to pay any attention to that the first time round. But it's very cool that's there here, and again we'll get to why in a bit.
Yeah, it's so rad. And as she's doing cleanup, this like because in this world they show on the I think very second page that there are anthropomorphic animals, but then like someone does have like a pet dog. There are wild animals as well.
The dog thing was less weird to me because like I feel like there's plenty of worlds where it's like, okay, these animals are like the people, but we'll have like different animals that are allowed to be animals. This is just a real bear and anthropomorphic bear in the same thing, which is a very interesting like world building type thing to do.
Yeah, and it I think really ties into what we'll see towards the end with Sam. Some metaphor that she goes through with herself. And we see this bear come through and, just walk on by, having bore witness to her crimes, and not being bothered at all by them because it's a bear. What does it care? It's just a bear.
Just a bear.
But Sam returns to Woodbrook. She has dinner with her, what she calls the closest thing she could call a friend, a mouse named Lola, who then reveals that they've known each other for 40 years and clearly, like, thinks that they're besties. And she's like, yeah, it's the closest thing that I could call a friend. And Lola's son, Nigel, they have a wonderful dinner together, and they're preparing to go to the like town's bicentennial parade because the town just turned 200. The parade comes, very exciting. We see all sorts of, again, very like children's book-esque things of like, oh, little animals playing trumpets and being in a parade, and oh, there's confetti, how nice. I don't think he's the mayor. I don't remember what bird he is, this turtle. He's real cute, is what he is. And he is riding this massive float, it's kind of like the piece de resistance of the parade. And as he passes by, the sail of this massive ship float that they've made falls and reveals a horrifyingly butchered and strung up body of the town's local librarian, butchered in this town parade, and it's horrifying.
It's horrifying. Such a nice issue ender though, and such a good setup for like delivering the okay, so this is going to be about not just this serial. It's going to be about this serial killer having to deal with a serial killer that breaks their rules.
Yes,
which is such a fun fucked up setup of like it's something that only really I think works following the person with the fucked up set of rules, because from an external perspective the logic makes no sense, but when you're internally on the character it works super well. So this got me real excited. I was like, okay, that setup is real freaking cool. And,
absolutely astounding. And like you said, amazing issue ender. Like we're reading this all together obviously, but I was reading it when it was coming out. This astounding, huge like, okay, this was interesting. Like, yes, serial killer in like a little fairy tale-esque town, and then, holy shit, such an amazing way to end an issue. But we very quickly jump into the town's reaction to this. They've gathered in the church with the mayor and the sheriff. They're trying to keep everyone calm. They institute this curfew, and the town folks are mostly scared, but one stands up as decidedly angry. A pig woman named Cherry. It's like Cherry Gherkins, which is such a good like bitchy town
She
member
is
name.
a pig Karen. I feel the importance of calling out. This is a pig Karen, which is incredibly entertaining.
It
in
is.
every conceivable way.
So yeah, she fully blames Birdie, the nice turtle man, for the death of Martin the goat, which is wild because Birdie. I guess, maybe it's not wild. So I'm out here like Birdie wouldn't hurt a fly, but the whole point of this series is like you never know. You never know.
But she
Could
gives
be
her
your
fucker a
neighbors.
black eye. Gives this
She does, yes.
This turtle man a black eye. Very rude.
Yeah. So Sam has decided that she needs to solve this serial killer murder before the police do, because if they start like poking around too much, they may discover that she is a murderer, which is just astounding motivation.
Such a fucking cool concept that serial killer needs to catch other serial killer before police figure out that she's a serial killer separately. I love it. It's so intriguing. I'm in. Keep taking us through this, Katie.
Yeah. So she goes to visit Birdie the turtle because he was theoretically the last one near this float before the next day when the goat body was upon it. So a reasonable person to talk to. And we see what might be, in my opinion, the cutest art of the entire series, which is Birdie, this adorable turtle with a black eye, and when he gets nervous, he like shoots inside of his little shell, and he's got like a little sweater and collared shirt on. I cannot overstate how, like, if this book were not about a serial killer bear, how absolutely adorable it would be. Like,
him eating a lollipop and like talking with the head in it, just like doing things with the head fully inside, is so funny.
It's so cute. I love this. I love this tort. He is such a good boy. But he has a black eye, which Sam surmises is from Cherry paying him a visit, because she is clearly quite the hothead. But Sam is after answers. She wants to know if there's anything that he has remembered since talking to the cops, and what our friend Birdie delivers is that on the night of the murder, he was working on setting up the float, and his a volunteer, the local butcher Melody, had been helping out, and she was bringing a bunch of lavender in, but kept sneezing because apparently she's allergic to lavender. He sends her home because she's sneezing and working with this material she's allergic to, which is a bummer. And he sends her home, and then somebody else sneezed. And he's chalked it up in his memory to just be Melody leaving, but it strikes him as suspicious enough that he lets Sam know. He immediately says, like, oh, you don't think Melody could have done something like that? And it's like, we get the first sense of, I guess with Cherry, that's kind of the first sense, but Cherry is a less sympathetic character, but we get this, like, really close sense of fear about, like, your neighbors could be the one doing this to you, and this, like, deep sense of dramatic irony, because we know what Sam does with her little monthly excursion to the city. But this sends Sam on a mission to find and chit-chat with Melody. But first, she's stopped by the cops. He asks where she was on the night of the murder, and she says it's just her regular trip to the city every couple months. She does some business up there. And there's this really wonderful, it's the second time we see it, or maybe the third time, she maybe does it a little bit at the parade, where we get a shot of her with, like, kind of mask on as she's, like, talking to the townsfolk and interacting with the town. And then as soon as they pass by, just, like, the mask drop and the emotionless face. It's such a good change. We also get it when she's driving out of town, and we get it a little bit when she sees the body, she like has no emotions while everyone around her starts to freak out. It's really wonderful, like character focused visual storytelling. But good timing, she spots across the street the woman of her, I was going to say affections, but that's very not right. A woman of interest. Cherry has
suspicions. Is I think what you were
suspicions.
You were
I think
for.
yeah. Cherry has fully blocked traffic so that she can go into a coffee shop and get her latte, because she's a bitch. Sam heads on over, and we can see that it looks like Cherry has fully cut in line, is demanding her latte, is being completely unreasonable, and Sam uses this to absolutely needle into her, saying, "Boy, I just saw Birdie, and he sure had a shiner of a black eye. Someone must have popped him pretty hard in the head," and is like speaking really empathetically about Birdie, which then causes Cherry to absolutely blow up. She ends up calling Sam a furry bitch, which is deeply funny to me, and she's surrounded by like other animals. Like, she's a pig, so she doesn't really have soul.
It was like the kind of thing you expect in like when there's one random like anthropomorphic creature in the world, but it was incredibly funny.
Incredibly funny. So she literally shoves Sam to the ground and tells him to fuck off. Something about like your time. It's like, "Oh, Cherry, calm down, please." He doesn't pay for a latte, because again, she sucks.
Just how awful Cherry is.
She really is, and it's great because we see the rest of the town being like these wonderful little, like, you know, small town critters who love each other and care about each other.
Yeah.
And then she just deeply sucks. But then we get what I find actually to be a pretty funny, humanizing moment for her. She's determined not to be afraid of the fact that there's clearly a killer loose in town. And so she lightly argues with her husband, who's like, "Oh, maybe you shouldn't go out there. There's a killer." And I love her little line, "Oh, Howard, you're such a pushover. They'll walk all over you if you let them. That's why I married you." And I'm like, that's pretty cute. I think that's kind of adorable, because he seems very happy. She goes out on her little walk, and the tension in this little sequence is so wonderful. We see her walking down what, you know, should be a very safe little street. Her little footsteps do little pits, 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 pits along the sidewalk, which is adorable again. And then we're hit with the horror of a plunk in an alleyway, a cascade of leaves drawing our attention. The fear around her, like a car goes by and she clearly like jumps when that happens. And then a mysterious figure in front of her. Cherry gets what she deserves. Her fingers are cut off and she goes running. She breaks into the local school to try to escape this killer, who then trips her and fully butchers her, which is horrifying. The principal comes in the next day, sees the head of Cherry staked in a bucket of her own guts. And naturally, this sends things even more into chaos in this nice little town. I love the kills in this book. Like, I know that's something that people talk about in like slasher movies and stuff.
Without it, but it's also so horrifying. On like when it comes to the actual murders. Like when we had seen the cover reveal for Patrick Horvath's other book, there's like that cross section of the head. We get that cross section a couple times with the like dead people. Like, for whatever reason, man likes to draw like the full interior of creatures' heads, which is just horrifying.
It's so horrifying. It's so good.
Yeah. The kills
and like again, his line work is like so delicate. His coloring is like so soft, and it makes the like bloody horror of it even more horrifying. Like, I think that in like a Tim Seeley book, the horror of guts is less horrifying because it feels like it belongs there, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas in a book like this, the art style really lends itself to the feeling of disruption in the town, which is just a really wonderful stylistic choice when Patrick Horvath decided that this was going to be like a writer-artist project.
Absolutely.
Absolutely phenomenal.
Here?
Yes. So we have Cherry dead, so clearly Cherry isn't the killer. So now Sam must focus her attentions on somebody else, and that somebody else is the notoriously allergic to lavender, Melody.
Butcher.
Right?
Oh, you
yes.
were. I thought you were. I didn't realize you were looking for the name there.
Well, I was scrambling. Melody, the butcher. She is an anthropomorphic cat. We start with a wonderful sequence of people like locking their doors, and the fact that the town was shook up after the first murder, but now that it was like a serial killer, everyone's being like suspicious of everyone.
Yeah.
So this is where it really shifts from people being like, maybe it was an outsider, to really feeling like this happened within your own home. This is where we get the reveal that Melody is in fact a butcher, which is an inherently suspicious job when there's a serial killer on the loose.
Katie hates butchers. She thinks they're all murderers, suspicious, horrible.
Here's the thing: if you have the skills, like, I'm not going to assume that my grandmother.
The skill for butchering equals that you have the skill to murder somebody.
Here's the thing: I'm talking the physical skill. Because, like, I'm not going to suspect my grandmother of hacking my computer. Because I know she doesn't
be capable. Like a butcher could be somebody who's like, fairly like incapable of killing somebody.
I'm saying the skill to butcher someone. Like, they cut the man open. They cut Cherry's head off. Like, those are the mechanical skills needed.
I don't think it takes much skill to cut somebody's head off.
I was going to very emphatically say I disagree, but I think that makes it sound like I know too much about how to cut somebody's head off, so I'll just move along. But today is the day of Martin's funeral, the goat who was strung up in the parade. And we see a glimpse into the kind of lonely life that Melody leads. We see these pictures of her and her husband, and we don't see him interacting with her. There's like an empty place setting, but we're not the only ones watching Melody right now, because Sam is in full stalker mode, like peering through windows, looking through shutters, and we see the first glimpse of Melody's husband, which is just a limp arm in a bed that Sam has seen, and now believes that there is a full corpse in Melody's home. Which, like, if she's a serial killer, maybe there is. We also see the less than local news has shown up, full international, not international, I'm sure, but like national news, that's disrupting things as well and bringing a lot of attention to this little town where I was about to say poor Sam, but like I guess she is a serial killer.
The poor serial killer. I was literally going to say,
where poor Sam is literally just trying to kill people according to the rules.
Poor Sam's just trying to commit her murders,
Sam is just trying to like take the edge off with a little murder.
Yeah.
And we see a really great kind of that mask on, mask off moment with Sam. We see that with Melody as well, which kind of lends to that sense of like, maybe she is a killer. We go through her day where she is like routinely covered in blood and cutting meat, because she's a butcher and also maybe a serial killer. And it's a very, I want to emphasize how great a job they do of like framing her, essentially. Because spoiler, she's not the killer. But the attention, like the choice of paneling is all of it, like, every shot is meant to look like so guilty. It's like, yes, let's literally focus on her using a bone saw to cut into some ribs. Let's, like, do a stabbing. It's beautifully drawn and does such a good job of, like,
and the red backgrounds are used when she's butchering, which up to this point were only used when we saw Sam butchering, huge
call out there.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah, so that sequence is just so wonderful. And with her suspicions on high alert, Sam decides that she needs a closer look at Melody, so she throws a brick through the butcher shop window and then books it to Melody's home, where she breaks in now that Melody is away, and discovers that the arm in bed is like a giant stuffed animal of Melody's husband, which is itself horrifying, but is not in fact a corpse.
No.
And when Melody comes home, Sam hides, and when Sam tries to sneak out, Melody catches her. And Sam explains that she thought Melody was a murderer, which went about as well as you could expect. We learn the sad backstory on the reason she makes the stuffed animals because she's lonely, and you get that sense of like she talks a lot about like the mask that she put up so when her husband died, and so we get that kind of thematic through line with her as well. And then we come to the funeral. Sam is here and doing her most sociopathic monologue where she's talking about how like she doesn't understand why people are feeling the way they are, and like fully admit, she's like, oh yeah, I have caused this feeling in so many people just completely without empathy. She in fact calls it fascinating to watch, truly horrifying. We get the reveal that somebody has perfumed themselves with lavender oil, and we hear a sneeze. When Sam looks over, the guilty party is Layla's son, Nigel. And we get a mask-on, mask-off thing with him as well, where he looks surprised and then evil. And what a reveal that is. Did you have any suspicions about Nigel?
No, but I will throw out here, because I think for, like, our purposes, saying this is like a reveal is a little wrong. Like, it is a reveal, but it's revealed like the next essentially suspect, because there's no yes, this is 100% the person here. Like, it is the sneeze, but we've had other suspects before this that have then been proven to be wrong. So I just feel like that
is fair. What I remember from reading it before is I don't remember if my full thing had them, but there were little like cover reveals for the next issue at the end of the previous issue. And the next issue cover reveal for Nigel has him with like a stalker box. So I guess you're right that it's not necessarily like a murder thing. Like maybe he was just stalking Sam, but fair enough. Not quite a full reveal at the end of the issue.
Like they got the sneeze, so that makes him, another stuff. But I figured the fact to throw out there's no like, this is 100% our murder.
That's super fair. I think that I might have also been like, every time they showed a new person, I was like, okay, this person's the murderer.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying like there's like a retroactive thing, because like if it had turned out that somebody earlier was the murderer, you'd go at the first point that they were suspected and go, this is the reveal, and it's like, well, kind of, but yeah,
kind of, yeah. But yeah, I think that's just a testament to what a good job Patrick Horvath does in making all of these people into suspects. I think Cherry was the only one where I was like, oh yeah, because she
felt very much like the setup for like it's not gonna be the one person who's like an actual like bad person on the surface, because that defeats the vibe of the book. But anyway, we want to keep.
The town is essentially a ghost town now. Everyone is so afraid to go outside. Sam takes it upon herself to visit Lola, who is sick with something. I don't think it really matters what, but Nigel has been, he came home as a caretaker for her after going off to college. And while the three of them, Lola, Sam, and Nigel, are having nice tea, she has a bit of an episode. Nigel brings her upstairs, which then gives Sam a chance to confront Nigel. And in a scene that it reminds me of something, but I just can't for the life of me remember what. It's like borderline The Incredibles, where the person doing a clearly bad thing has it in their head that this person they admire is going to like be proud of them essentially and take them on as a protege.
Yeah, I thought you were gonna go with the Batman, the Riddler scene in the Batman.
That's probably what I was actually. Like, I knew that it wasn't The Incredibles that I was thinking of, even though it kind of applies to The Incredibles. It was definitely the Batman thing.
Yeah, it feels like where Batman goes to visit him once he's locked up, and he's like, "No, that's not what was supposed to happen."
Yes. But Nigel had come home to take care of his mom, and he started to stalk, in, full creep behavior, stalk Sam, following her around town, and eventually following her out of town. He saw her butcher someone, and I decided that he had found someone like him, and clearly that was like what was wrong with him as well, was that he is a sociopath, and so he started to kill people in town to like impress her essentially, and
he says to prove himself, which is a very cool.
It really is.
Yeah, a very cool motivation there. I really like that. I also like seeing like the outside perspective of when we get that flashback of like him watching Sam do the murder. It's just a very cool alternate view of a scene. I love seeing shit like that where you get like different, essentially shots of an earlier scene. It's very fun.
Super duper fun. But naturally, what we know of Sam is that she kills by her rules, and that not following her rules is a fucking problem. So she immediately blows up at him, and is like telling him that he needs to stop what he's doing because he's like fucking up the town. And like fully rejects this kid trying to like get mentorship. Which will certainly go well for her because he's a sociopathic serial killer.
The sociopathic child. I don't know how old he's supposed to be. Is he
like
a teenager,
post-college?
young adult?
Because he went to college and came back. Or he might be mid-college. Because he didn't finish college, I don't think.
This 20-something-year-old enraged. Which is, a very, like, doesn't bode well. It's very much that, like, you as a reader kind of immediately get the, like, that was a bad idea. Why didn't you just go along with it at least for a little bit? Like, you've shot yourself in the foot moment.
Yeah.
But Sam, as a sociopath, cannot see how this is not going to be the correct decision.
Yeah, so she goes back to, like, her mundane routines. We see her cleaning her house and starting to feel paranoid, which is super duper rad. And then we see her back at the store, running the shop, and someone has bought a can of paint. Sam notices a red smudge on the side of it and swaps them out for him. As it turns out,
that I called out earlier, by the way, this is the comeback there for the visual indication that is not a paint can that you'd want to sell to somebody.
No, that's got a hand in it. So she sends Charlie home, closes early, and she opens the paint can. It turns out Nigel has dug up all of her paint cans that have all of these body parts in them. And, I mean, has filtered one in to her supply, at least. But that is just the start of her problems with him. She starts to have this, like, trippy dream sequence where she's back at the parade, but she's holding the hand and everybody sees. She imagines the duck strung up on his thing with the town all around her. And the town just, like, delighted to watch Sam butcher. And then,
importantly, a part of the town are two non-anthropomorphic bears in this.
Yes, yeah.
thing.
And these two bears come forward and eat her. Like, they murder her, and the town is watching and happy just as they were when she was murdering the duck. So we get that, that started, I was going to say that creep of insanity, like, just more so than what she already has going on. Assuming at any point, Sam's general level of insanity and bad personness is accounted for. So this is just her being extra crazy. She sees a shadow outside her window and starts shouting out the back, thinking that Nigel is watching her. But yeah, so she's not only starting to kind of slip into this extra level of crazy, but she's also starting to slip with her mask, because she like shouts at the window and stuff with the fox here. Morning comes, and in what I think is the most emotional death of the series, Charlie has been murdered in the hardware store, and all of those paint cans are in there, full of body parts. Nigel catches her as she's driving up and does kind of a villain monologue to her. So naturally, Sam absolutely books it, and we see that there is a full, like, multi-county BPD put out for Samantha Strong. Yeah. Which is another amazing issue ender. The
issue enders are real freaking good.
They're real freaking good. Yeah, and the story is so engaging.
This death was certainly particularly brutal. And
because Charlie Charlie is a presence throughout the full series. Like, he's constantly shown as like this very like kind and loving father and husband. He can be a bit of a dope, but he's like, when Cherry died, whatever, she deserved it.
Yeah.
When the goat died, it's like, okay, we didn't have much time with him. Charlie hits me.
Brutal. Yeah,
this one's brutal. He's such a good boy, and his wife and children. And I don't remember, is it at the end of that issue, or no? It's
just her driving
later on. Yeah,
issue.
Yeah.
I don't know what in particular we're thinking of, but I had a feeling.
Yeah, no, it is later on. Yeah, it is later on. So we get to issue 5, which is Sam essentially on the run. She's fled back to the city, but people are after her. Like, the cops in the city know about her as well. She sees that they're actively searching for her, and she is haunted by the butchered bodies of her victims. Which, again,
head cross sections that I was like, oh, they come back and you see them a lot. It seems like he really likes drawing that shit, because it happens.
This man loves to draw noodles. Yeah, it's so gross. It's so, like, it's just so visceral, because they all have these, like, this grid on them of where she butchered them. And these creatures don't talk to her. They're these ghosts that are haunting her. And to evade the police, she ends up peeling off of the main road and essentially crashing in the forest, and needing to kind of tap into that wild animal side of her as she, falls, is covered in dirt. She goes and literally, like, steps into a bear cave, and she's forced to, like, kind of look at herself in a very on-the-page literal, but thematically metaphorical way, where she moves through this kind of strange space and is looking underneath the surface of herself. She is such an interesting character.
Yeah, this is maybe the least, like, plot heavy issue. Like, this issue is a little, like, to the side as we get this more introspective, character driven issue before the finale, but it is so fantastically done. It's also, I want to say, like the most quiet issue in the sense of like it has, I think, by far the least number of captions. Like it's a lot more like of a visceral, image based issue, which is, I think, highly effective leading into the conclusion. I'd be interested in how I feel about it though, like in the monthly format.
I went hard for it.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that definitely like would it pushes that like satisfaction a little bit. You know, it's like
that's fair.
We're not going to follow up on anything. You're going to draw out a little bit longer. I think one issue though is where you can get away with that.
Exactly.
It's just like building up more anticipation. It's just something that I was not able to read it that way, so it jumps.
That's fair, and I think that where the issue ends does kind of give you a bit of that like it draws out the anticipation of the conclusion really well. But she kind of looks inside herself, and it comes forward with this like sense of almost like self-satisfaction with the fact that she's a murderer, which is so interesting. Like,
I mean, you're right, but I just love hearing that out loud in that way.
It's one of those wild things where when you make the protagonist of your story into a serial killer, and not in like, again, like a Dexter way where it's like, oh, he's killing serial killers. Like, she is just fully horrible person, sociopath.
I don't know if you ever watched You. It's more like
I have not. But I think I know the way you're talking about. I think I know the concept of the show. But it's hard to give her like a character arc that feels right. Like there's a reason that earlier I gave a little slip and was like, oh, poor Sam, and it's because I like Sam. I think that she's really neat. And like
a crazy person.
Katie hates butchers and loves serial killers. That's what we learned in this episode. Stay away from Katie. She knows too much about how to behead people.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, everything lining up here. You don't like butchers, because you want to set them up as like your pets. So you know a lot about you know how to sympathize with and enjoy a serial killer protagonist. Like, I'm starting to think you are a serial killer, but that's that's neither here nor there when it comes to this review. Very unrelated.
Yes, so we'll just move on. Yeah. We'll tell the cops later.
I'll probably forget.
Yeah, you certainly will. After I inject you with whatever that sleep thing she used was.
You don't live anywhere near me, so
that's what you think. This is a green screen. But we see Sam, she comes out of this cave with like a renewed sense of purpose of like, hey, I'm gonna go back to town and I'm gonna take my place back. And she encounters these two bears in the wild. One of them has just killed a deer, And I suppose there's some metaphor in there of like deer being symbols of innocence, but I think it's also just a very like direct, in nature, bear kill deer, and there's nothing morally complicated about that. That's just how nature goes. And a second bear comes along, tries to take the kill, but the brown bear, notably, that original bear, slices it open, spills its guts, and comes out victorious. And Sam clearly has like a almost spiritual reaction to this. She's seen what she calls the natural order of things and where everyone belongs, and she's got work to do. And in what is so like stupidly exciting, she heads back to Woodbrook. She breaks into her own store to get her supplies. She is like in full killer mode. She gets a blade, some tape, and plastic. In the captions, she says it's going to be messy, so she'll double up on the plastic. And I think it's so nice and cool. The zero empathy, the full serial killer mind. It's, again, such a phenomenal issue ender.
The issue enders are real freaking good, which is, I think, such an important talent in general in comics, but I feel like especially for miniseries.
Yes.
Like, it's a real good thing to keep people, intrigued
Excited,
specifically about the next issue in a mini-series, because there's a lot of like that, like you just have to keep them for that time, and then that's that. But yeah, no, it's a very cool issue. It weirdly opens up the question of like, in an anthropomorphized animal world, like not really opens up the question. I feel like this is something that people talk about when it comes to the anthropomorphic animal world. It's like, well, what about the ones that are predators for the other, ones? And I think this goes like, well, this is what it looks like, and there you go, sit with that.
And I mean, of the creatures we saw killed, there was the duck. There was I'm trying to think of specifically the ones that Sam has killed. We see the duck, and was the other one a dog?
Yes.
So I guess that doesn't super work out. I'm trying to think of like the kind of predator-prey angle, and I don't think there is quite one of those. I don't think in like this utopia way it's like, there are some animals that are, evil and aggressive, and others that aren't. I mean, Nigel is literally a mouse, the most unassuming, powerless creature in the animal kingdom. But yeah, super, super duper rad. The way that she looks at nature, and I think that's probably the reason why Patrick Horvath made this a anthropomorphic animal story, is to look at that semblance of nature. And I suppose there may be a deeper criticism in there of, allowing humans to like call themselves part of nature and be like, oh yeah, it's the natural order of things. But in terms of the book, they're very much animals, and it's very exciting. We open on issue 6, and Nigel is burning the photographs that he has sadistically taken of his victims. We see him hide away some other precious items as well before heading back to town. There's so many good moments in this of like near misses, as we know that he's the killer, and we know that he's like looking for people to kill. He chats with like this young tiger girl. We see him following and essentially stalking the rabbit barista, and it's just this. It's so different from the way that Sam went about her serial killing, of like this random thing. He wants to have this personal connection to the people he's killing. And people keep forgetting his name, which is very funny. Like nobody recognizes him in town, which is again this like reflection of Sam, who everyone recognizes and loves. Well, loved until she's currently framed for murder. Which like she is a murderer, but not these murders. He also
has a conversation with like the newspaper vendor about Sam being, outed as the serial killer, which is a very cool, interesting sequence, because obviously he's talking to the actual.
Exactly.
Also a serial killer. But the serial killer that he thinks Sam is actually
local butcher. Not to be confused with me, he's the local butcher. So Nigel even stands out like it's always someone who never suspects. And you go, all right, Nigel, you little bitch. So he's doing all of these things that break Sam's rules, which have kept her and her serial killing safe and under the radar for 20 years. And it's so interesting to see how these two killers are portrayed, because they're so different, even though they're doing the same thing, at the end of the day. The way that he's like seeking out this personal connection with his victims, a personal connection that he does not have in his community, and then the way that Sam, who has all this personal connection, but can't seem to like connect with that connection, is just zero empathy doing it. But none of these murders pan out for him, because rolling into town is Sam. She goes to see She goes to see Nigel's mom, Lola, her oldest friend, or what she says is the closest thing she can call a friend. And she tells Lola that Nigel is the murderer, and Lola admits that she knows this. Lola very conspicuously say that he has been a bit wild lately, tied into our little, like, domestic versus wild animal theming. And Sam lays her plan. Nigel.
I'll throw out the important thing that I think you missed in that same line of wild. She also then indicates that she also knows that Sam is a serial killer.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting that this woman is clearly just okay with this thing because she knows both her son and her best friend are serial killers, and there's it'll come up kind of the like sense of that acceptance and then the difference in Sam and Nigel. So
yeah,
I'll let you go through, but it's
super
very cool
rad.
the way it ties into to their differences.
Oh yeah.
In any case.
But yeah, so Nigel has seen that Sam's car is back, and so he climbs in through her window. What he finds when he enters Sam's house, though, is his mother dead. Sam has killed this woman who considered her best friend, who knew that she was a serial killer, and didn't tell anyone because of how much she loved her. She has butchered her, which is so insanely raw. Like, oh my god, Sam. Yeah. This is where that difference between Sam and Nigel, like you're saying, really is on display.
I mean, when you get into actually what happens here when she knocks Nigel out, that she then literally, like, taunts him about the fact that, unknown to him, like, his mother accepted him because she knows how important that'll be to Nigel, but clearly it isn't important to her because she killed the same only person who accepted her. So it's just such a cool, like, understanding of the difference between them, and she uses it fully to such her advantage here in what is just an awesome sequence.
It's so phenomenal because she sneaks up behind him, knocks him out because he's having a very emotional reaction to his mother's death, which is a very normal thing to do, and she gets to villain monologue back at him about her plan to set him up for the murder of his mother. And, you know, he has a gun, so she's set it up so it'll look like the two of them fought over this gun, and then she won and shot him. All of the stuff from his little lockbox, and oh my gosh. So she's going to be able to fully expose him as the murderer of the town and exonerate herself at the same time. And all it took was killing her best friend. But she gives no shits about that because the woman is the closest thing she could call to a friend. Like, it's
not a friend.
Insane. And we see that Nigel dies crying as, you know, is a mood. And the plan works. The town goes back to a sense of normalcy. We see people out and about walking back to their usual haunts. There's a fireman taking a cat out of a tree. Children walking all by their lonesome. There's a sense of moving forward, even from Melody, who's like walking with this gerbil guy, and was like, "Oh, are they gonna get together? How nice! She'll have someone to share a bed with." And there's a really sweet interaction between Sam and Charlie's wife, where Charlie's wife brings her a snack, and when Sam was cleaning up in the butcher shop, she found Charlie's ring and passes it back to her in what is, I think, the most mask-on moment of, like, that is such a wild bit of false empathy to extend. That fucks me up real bad. Like, that is some freaky shit right there. Like, having the ring and the wherewithal to give it back because she's so good at masquerading as someone with, like, empathy and who cares. Fucked up. Yeah, the sheriff apologizes, and Sam steps back into her shop, watching the people of Woodbrook go by, and decides to hibernate for a while. with the clear implication that hibernation ends and she will start killing again, which is also so fucked up and horrifying.
Oh yeah, no, the hibernate is such a cool line to use there. It does indicate there's more. Now, obviously, we know there is more coming. We're going to get a sequel series,
which is very exciting
to hear,
but also very satisfying on its own.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, I'm actually interested in like the sequel. Like, what are you going to do there? Because if you just bring in, like, you can't redo this concept of like another serial killer like on her, because that's just going to get like, oh, there's other serial killer that she's deal. So you have to take it in some sort of a different direction, and I fully entrust in Patrick Horvath to do something interesting, but it's just it has to be different. Like, there's no way to redo.
My pet theory is, I mean, they found all of those cans with body parts in them.
Yeah.
If they're able to, like, predate those, or, you know, be like, oh, this hair, I don't know what kind of tech they have in this world, but I think that it's going to be something to do with all of her previous murders catching up to her, as opposed to
that's fair. I just think they need and we'll see what they do. I think there needs to be more to it than just like, now she's gonna be like followed or like sought after for the pills that she's done in the past. Like, I think there'll be something there, because this is such a cool concept of it. I feel like something very cool is going to be in that sequel. I have no idea what
absolutely
is, but
but as established, very cool. Do you think it was strange? Because today is the Strange Saturday, after all.
I think it lands in, like, it might be like, because I'm gonna say it lands more in the territory of like the less weird things we do.
That's fair. Where it's weird and
I like
concept.
as I think about it. But like it's not actually all that weird and execute. Like, I think Hack Slash is even a little bit weirder than this, because at least that has like the turn on its head of like it's them going after slashers instead of vice versa.
Well, I mean, this is a serial killer going after serial killer.
Yeah.
Going after a serial killer.
That's fair. That's
fair. In terms of I think that
it's like, listen, it's straight. I do think it de-seats, in my opinion, Hack Slashes are at least weird straight Saturday Super Show.
That's fair. That's fair. But it's just so good, and it's a murderous forest critters. So I think that it is inherently strange in and of itself.
I think anthropomorphic creatures have just become very non-strange by comic book standards. Like, it is a very normal thing in comics to have anthropomorphic characters as your characters. Again, weird. I just think because it is a much more like, I don't think you read this and go like, anything here is like weird in execution. It's very much.
It's one of those things where you buy into the world so much that it's like, no, I'm just reading this as a normal world. I don't care that I care that she's a bear thematically.
Like, the reading process that I go, oh, this is fucking weird. And I think Hack Slash has issues that are like that, and then Hack Slash also has issues where I'm like, no, this is fucking weird. You know, so like, Hack Slash is the other thing that I'm like putting up there with it. Maybe I'm forgetting one that isn't quite as weird.
I feel like you didn't think My Date with Monsters was particularly weird.
I think that's weird because I think conceptually that's weird. When we were talking about that last time, I forgot about the fact that they had an entire like thing that was training soldiers how to date her, and I think that ups the weird factor a lot. But no, I think that's a step above. I think that's a little bit above Hack Slash in this, which I'd put in like
in terms of weirdness.
Same tier. I'm just gonna give Hack Slash the slight edge in terms.
Yeah, that's just in terms of weirdness. In terms of quality, this book is so phenomenal.
Also up there with Hack Slash as one of the best.
Yes, I was just moving us right along too. How did you like the book outside of its strangeness?
This was very, very good. It's executed on such a fantastic level. It's one of those writer-artist books that feels like a writer-artist book through and through. It's visually fantastic, and in like not in a and not. I'm not saying this in like a shade way, but not in like this splash or this image is just so freaking beautiful on an art level. Like, it has some of that, but much more on like the sequential storytelling is so good. level, which in I prefer that. I put that above the like just beautiful art. Both are fantastic, but sequential storytelling being as good as it is here is so important to comic books.
I think that it does
this was
a phenomenal job.
Story too.
It is, yeah.
Which is just great.
It does a phenomenal job in that kind of writer arts in a way that I think I associate a lot with Ben Stenbeck from Our Bones Dust, with using like quiet moments and being able to effectively communicate what a writer might want to have written on the page, but an artist can convey without words.
Yes, I think it's also really good a lot more wordy than.
Comparing anything to Our Bones Dust in terms of word count is.
Because I think Ben Stenbeck is very much like, yes, a fantastic writer artist, but I think Ben Stenbeck leans more into the art side, and he does a lot more of like, how do I write something in which I can do most of the method of communication through art, whereas I think this is very much Patrick Horvath is like really doing both. He's
super fair. Like, I'm saying really well done.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to shout out because like Our Bones Dust has, I think, no captioning or next to no captioning. It has speech bubbles. I don't know if there's any captioning in that. Maybe there is, and I'm just forgetting.
I don't remember any. I think at least it's
a heavy use of captioning, which and very effective captioning. So I just wanted to, because I think there's a slight stylistic difference there. You're right that they have those moments. Like
I'm saying most closely to Ben Stenbeck in terms of these moments of communication. But it's so good at that, and I think we mentioned the issue enders a few times during the review, and by a few, I think I mean 5, because all of them are phenomenal. It's one of those books that works super, super, super well as a, like, while it releases and as a read-through after, which is so wonderful for a miniseries to do.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a very tightly connected story. I can't speak to the monthly experience. Katie can. You did jump on it late, though, right? You didn't jump on monthly with issue 1.
I jumped on late in terms of it was like the week before issue 2 came out.
Okay. Yeah. I just remember you like being like, I finally picked up Our Bones, not Our Bones, Beneath the Trees.
Because it was getting a lot of hype, and I hadn't picked it up on the first month, and then it was right before issue 2 came out that I grabbed it.
I think my vibe, because like I talked to Katie before this, I thought this was longer than 6 issues. I think just because Katie made it sound like she was jumping on so late when she jumped on right before issue 2, that in my mind she was like 5 issues late, and I knew it went on for a while after that. I thought this was like a 12-issue series that Katie jumped on at like issue 6 or 7. So that's why I've been so off on like the way that I saw this
set up.
The interaction we had around that. But no, this was really, really freaking good, and I'm super excited now we can do the sequel on the podcast as it comes out.
I'm so hyped.
Super fun. We're like, it's such a testament to like, I wish IDW would do more creator owned, and I think the indication is with the editorial change that they're going to be doing more creator owned. I think that that was like the rumor. Who knows how many of those rumors were true, because a bunch of them were like immediately in the same thing shouted out as not true. But despite the fact that IDW at this point doesn't do many creator owned, and I wish that they would do more, the ones that they do put out are of such a high like watermark of quality that I really do feel super like I'm never going to say no to jumping on an IDW creator own that's coming out right now, because I feel like they have such a high bar that if they're putting out a creator own, it's going to be really freaking good.
Oh yeah. And again, shout out to Patrick Horvath. This was like his big writer artist intro in the comic world. Like, he had done art on other books. But this was like such an amazing introduction to him.
Yeah,
for this to be the
big film guy. Isn't he? Like, I think he's a.
That's what I said in the comic world.
No, I know. You like the way that he keeps like. I don't want people to get the indication like, oh, this was a nobody who like just was able to put out a creator-owned book and get all this like. I think it's important information for people who like don't have background. Like, this is not a man who had no, connection or like creative background and just like put out this book with no, history and it took off. Like, I just, for the folks at home, it's not me. I know that you know this. I'm just trying to put this information in the video so it's there.
Let me finish. Yeah, I knew.
Yeah.
But yeah, super excited to read the next series on the pod.
Yeah.
But of course, that won't be for a while. But the pod will go on until then.
We're not canceling the pod, surprisingly.
Exactly. Reading this book did not end our podcast.
Yeah.
As I am, in fact, sitting in front of a green screen and I'm about to murder Jay.
That would be very rude.
That'd be very rude. But, you know, that's fine. We had an episode this past Wednesday where we talked about books. Do you remember? Oh, Rook Exodus.
I don't remember a single one.
Rook Exodus.
Void Rivals.
The moon is following us. Yeah. It was a thick week. There were like 7 books. Nightwing, yeah. Turtles.
The other IDW creator-owned book, The Hunger in the Dusk. The only 2 that I know of right now, but I think there's the other horror one that's going to be coming out as well. So
and also Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
That's right? Not creator-owned, but another IDW.
Well, I would say in terms of books we talked about this past week.
Oh yeah.
Next week we will have another sweet episode of for you coming on Wednesday, including Backslash. Yeah,
Backslash will be on that episode, so
sure will.
Check that out. And the next Saturday we're going to be doing our first, well, I guess technically second ever, but first ever where we're actually covering the books. Absolute DC Universe episode where we'll be covering all of the #1 issues of Absolute. That's Absolute Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman. And we'll be both recapping everything in those for you guys so you can stay up to date on the Absolute Universe. And we will also be going through the scoring for our Absolute Fantasy League, which you can check out the first episode of on the channel, where we did the draft for the Absolute Universe. But yeah, that's going to be very exciting.
Absolutely, super
Batman
excited.
Going up against Team Wonder Woman, and I'm going to win. So
I don't know about that. I have a pretty good... I feel pretty good about my Brainiac boy. He's sitting on my bench. So I think that's going to go well for me.
I feel very good about many things. So
yeah, we'll just have to wait and see next Saturday.
See you next week. Comic Geeks!